What up, horror fam? Welcome back to the channel. So it is that time of week where we have just finished watching episode 5 of Dexter Original Sin. And I'm gonna say this was a very busy episode, busier than any of the previous 4 episodes we've gotten already. And it didn't really highlight some of the things that we called out in our episode 4 recap and summary, where we did mention, at least what my prediction was, I mentioned while it was going to touch on the mistake that Dexter made with Mad Dog escaping and then getting hit by a car at the end of episode 4. I was hoping they were going to address the fact that he threw those earrings from Nurse Mary into Gator Alley into the water, and the fact that we did see Tony's arm raised from the water. They haven't addressed that yet, and now I'm kind of wondering if they are even going to address that, because episode 5 wasn't jumping as much as the previous episodes had. We didn't get as many flashbacks, thank God, of Harry and Laura. It stayed pretty true to what was happening in the present. Now, don't get me wrong, we did have a couple flashbacks, and we will go over those here in a moment, but it wasn't as heavy on those and didn't rely on those for Harry's story in this episode, which I did enjoy. So I'm wondering if they're going to start getting away from the flashbacks, because they've pretty much told much of that story already. And we're starting to see where I'm thinking we're getting it towards the end of Harry's life in the present, because we're at episode 5. We don't have many more to go. And you would think that they would end off Harry's character in this prequel prior to moving forward back to the present time of Dexter New Blood, and then moving us right into Dexter Resurrection, because we do know at some point Harry does retire himself. But the kids are led to believe, and I say the kids meaning Dexter and Deb, are led to believe it was due to a heart attack for the longest time, until they did find out later on in the original series that that was not the case. So let's jump into some of the key points from episode 5 of Dexter Original Sin. Now, the title of this episode is F for F'd Up. So I'm going to keep it clean, not going to use the terminology. Don't want to offend anybody. Don't want to get hit with the YouTube algorithm. So going to keep it as clean as I possibly can. But so where we kick off with this episode, just real quickly, is really where we left off on episode 4. We know Mad Dog escaped from Dexter, was running half naked down the street, and got hit by a car. And that's where the episode ends. We pick right up where that ends, and the driver of the car is freaking out, young kid trying to figure out what's going on. Dexter sees this, and Dexter at the time not knowing if he's been seen by anybody, but he rushes back to the house knowing that he's got to get the things cleaned up. He's got to get all the plastic down, the pictures down, and then we see him spraying and looking for any blood. He did find some, and luckily was able to clean it up and got the room back to where it was. Now, we do see him believing he knows how long it's going to take Miami Metro to respond to this incident, and he misguessed that completely. He thought he had roughly 15 minutes. They were there in about 11, 12 minutes. He was still in the Mad Dog's house when they showed up, and he was hiding. Luckily, didn't get caught, but again, was able to take everything down the room, hoping that when they do a search of Mad Dog's house, that they're not going to find any evidence of foul play. So we then move forward a bit, and once Dexter gets home, him and Harry have a heated argument, because Harry finds out about all of this over the police radio, over the police scanner. And Dexter tries to play it off like, oh, nothing happened. And Harry's like, no, something happened. What's going on? And right then there tells Dexter, you're not ready. Never should have allowed you to even take out Nurse Mary in episode 1. So he tells Dexter, no more, everything goes through me, you're on lockdown, and now you're stuck to just training. You're no longer gonna, do the things that you've been doing. Dexter doesn't obviously agree with that initially, but what choice does he have? And in a sense, he grounds him. He's a 20-year-old out of college, working at Miami Metro Forensics, and he's grounded, tells him pretty much don't leave the house. And the reason he's doing that is to make sure, as he goes back to Miami Metro, hey, is there any evidence of foul play? Did anyone see Dexter? So he's trying to get some information to make sure that's okay for Dexter to come back to Miami Metro, that he's not going to be walking into an arrest possibly. So Dexter stays home, comes across some brownies in the fridge, didn't read the label. These are special brownies that Deb had made for her cheerleading team, and Dexter pretty much eats the entire thing until Deb shows up, has some as well, and they have this sibling bonding that evening, which we haven't seen at all between episodes 1 and 4. And we do see a bit of this bonding later on in the original series, where they do have dinner quite often together. So I think that felt to me a bit of a callback, where again you have that sibling bonding, that they would be having dinner together and really just being themselves. And they a couple of times were having some real life moments. What would you think Mom would think of us? Their mom being Doris, and at this point has already passed, but reminiscing a bit. So after that's all said and done, Harry comes back the next day, tells Dexter, come back to work. Dexter shows up, and he realizes he needs to fix the mistake of, what he did, right? Now, he wasn't aware, though, that the individual who hit Mad Dog with his car is being interviewed by Lieutenant LaGuerta, or actually Maria LaGuerta. Not a lieutenant yet, just a detective, so apologize for that. And Harry tells him, you need to go in there and you need to fingerprint him. You need to get his fingerprints. Dexter's a little bit taken aback, like, why would you want to put me in that situation? And this is really to make sure that this individual can't ID Dexter, that once he sees Dexter, he has no idea who he is, just to make sure, again, that he wasn't seen at the scene, that this witness doesn't point the finger at Dexter saying, oh, well, he was there as well. So I think that was probably the primary reason why Harry would have wanted him to do that, and why he specifically brought him back at that point in time. So all that didn't turn out to be anything. Again, didn't identify Dexter at all. So one thing that we also we do find out and cover a bit here is Harry finds out from Dexter how Mad Dog even escaped initially, and told him, hey, it's your responsibility to make sure he's completely knocked out and he's subdued. And he wasn't, and Dexter owns that. And again, we hadn't seen from episodes 1 through 4, even up to this point, the M99, the tranquilizer that Dexter had used in the original series. So now in this particular episode, we see that now come to play. Dexter realizes he's got to figure out another way to subdue his victims, so to speak, and make sure that they don't get away. So as the episode moves on a little bit, before we get to that point, we see Harry attending court. He's having to testify on a case that was brought up in the earlier episodes, episode 2, I believe, where one of the witnesses was trying to give an alibi for one of the other characters, Levi Reed, who was arrested, trying to be prosecuted. And if you remember, Harry disregarded her, didn't trust her, like, hey, you're a drug addict, whatever you have to say isn't going to be reliable. And again, completely disregarded her. So the defense brings her in. At first, Harry doesn't recognize her, and then he realizes who it is. And right then and there, everyone is realizing Harry made a huge mistake. Even Harry realizes he's made a mistake because he totally disregarded this particular witness's ability to provide an alibi, and that was withholding evidence, withholding information. And so the judge threw out the entire case and allowed Levi Reed to walk. Now, this obviously has a huge ripple effect, not just for Harry, but across the department, where now Harry is punished, and he now has to work the very bottom of the barrel low cases with LaGuerta per the captain. And the captain's pretty much telling him, hey, you need to take a back seat, can't have you work anything high profile until I can figure things out. Now, at the same time this is all happening, Dexter is having a conversation with his boss, who's into horse racing, and she actually gives him some information about M99. Then we find Dexter realizes this could be what I'm looking for. He ends up at a stable where he actually steals some M99, and again, almost gets caught by some of the horse handlers there, but manages to escape. Around this time as well is the anniversary of Doris's death. Now, this is the mother of Deborah and Harry's wife, stepmother to, or foster mother to Dexter. But Dexter doesn't know that. Dexter fully believes that these are his birth parents, and they're trying to figure out, are we going to go, see her, her gravestone together, and some back and forth. Ultimately, what ends up happening is Deborah feels alone and without Doris, and ends up visiting the grave by herself. Both Dexter and Harry don't show up, obviously, for some of the things that we had just recently talked about. So she ends up going there, having again, another real life moment, right? That she feels alone, she feels abandoned, and she's just trying to get through life. So bit of a touchy moment there, not the usual Deb moments that we've seen in but episodes 1 through 4. So they did bring her down a bit from a humanistic level, which was good to see. So now we jump to some of the flashbacks that we talked about earlier in our recap. So we see a flashback of Harry over at Laura's. He's having a small conversation with Dexter, puts him to bed, and we also see a point where Harry's trying to fight this urge to either stay there and be with Laura or go home to his wife. He gives in to the urge, stays there with her, and then ultimately we see a flashback where he does come home, and Doris is there to surprise him and let him know that she is pregnant, and this is when she is pregnant with Deborah. So he's still married, and we knew all this was happening. We knew all this from the original series as the series went on, that he did eventually... the information that he did have an affair with Laura did come out. We didn't know that for the longest time, but again, as the series progressed, we found that information out, and then that information eventually got to both Dexter and Deborah as adults, which really tarnished their view of their dad, because again, they never thought that he would do such a thing, especially to their mom. As we continue on, as we start to wrap up the episode, after Harry realizes he botched the entire case, Levi has been let go, he's drunk, and now he's outside Levi's house, and he's getting ready to take him out. He wants to retire him and kind of fix the issue. Now he doesn't realize, though, as Dexter's right behind him with some M99, knocks Harry out. And then next thing you know, Harry awakes on a table in that classic saran wrapped to the table. And Dexter pretty much tells him, listen, I can take care of this for you. And I figured out how to subdue. I figured out how to keep my victims down. And Harry is freaking out just on the simple fact of what's going on and how Dexter is going about doing things, because now he's getting that firsthand look. Eventually, Dexter, cuts him free, and he tells Harry, hey, listen, you in a way made me this way. Doris was trying to make me a better person. You were trying to train me and harness, this dark passenger within me and how to either keep it within or utilize it. At that point, Dexter then convinces Harry to allow him to go after Levi and right that wrong that Harry messed up, and Harry gives him the okay. Even though after in the earlier episode, Harry was against him doing anything further, but I think this is a way that Harry is going to now use the dark passenger of Dexter to fix his own mistake and his own problem and have Dexter clean it up for him. Now, we come to the end of the episode, and Dexter is visiting Doris's gravesite. And again, we then see a more humanistic level of Dexter, not the killer, not the one where we have Michael C. Hall doing the overtalk and, trying to fight off that dark passenger. Knowing that Harry has accepted Dexter as who he is, but, Dexter knows Doris always had a more hopeful outlook for him and wanted something better for him. And as we mentioned, Dexter confronted Harry and said, you know what, you just trained me, but Doris, saw something better in me and wanted something better for me. I mean, we'll see how that plays out, how that works, within Harry's mind going into the rest of these episodes. If that is something where he reflects back and say, you know what, I could have done something different with Dexter, or I could have done something better to make the outcome different so he wasn't the way he is or didn't turn out the way he is. So that's our quick recap and summary of Dexter Original Sin episode 5. I'm still hopeful that we're going to see again the things with Nurse Mary, the earrings, Tony's hand or arm with the pinky ring, that those things are going to come up. If they don't bring those up, I think that's a missed opportunity, because they were things that were, and I've mentioned this before about the earrings. When Dexter took those earrings, the talk over of Michael C. Hall specifically said, I'm going to regret taking these. And again, if that regret moment had to do with the fact that Deborah found them and took them, gave them to Sophia, and then Harry find out that he was taking trophies. If that was the moment of regret, I think that was a missed opportunity. I think there could have been something more here, very similar to what they did with Mad Dog, where, you know, Dexter is involved and now Harry realizes that Dexter screwed up. Harry already knows Dexter screwed up by taking the earrings as a trophy, but the fact that he told him to get rid of them and he put him in a place where now there's a body that's not fully disposed of. Again, I think that would be a huge miss if they don't come back to that and somehow clean that up a bit. So that's going to do it for our review and recap. I would say for this episode, I would give it a 3 to 3.5 out of 5. It was much better than the previous episodes. Overall for the show, I'm still sitting at a 2.53 out of 5. It's just average. It's nothing exciting. It feels like it's not anything we don't already know about these characters. And again, like the previous episodes, no Batista in this episode whatsoever. Very small. We saw a very small bit of Masuka and again a very small part of LaGuerta. So they're really just focusing on this. It feels like at this point just Dexter, Harry, and Deborah, and then of course then the flashbacks between Harry and Laura. Outside of that, it's as if they brought these characters in to say, hey, they are around, they are in this world, so to speak, in Dexter's earlier years. But outside of that, we're not really going to be telling anything about them or having any engagement with these characters. Which, again, if you're not going to have them engaging, why even have them? We knew they were there. We knew that from the original series. So again, just wasted time, wasted space, wasted character development. You could have used that time to put towards the Dexter character, the Deborah character, or whatever else you want us to focus on. So again, complete miss in my eyes. So still sitting at 2.53 for this series. We'll see how it changes. They're gonna have to do a big drastic change for me to shift any higher than a 3. And as I mentioned, this will be a one and done viewing for me. I won't come back and watch this again. I won't have a need to, because as I've mentioned before, a lot of this information is already covered off in the original series, so we're not really learning anything new. It just feels like we're getting a visual for a lot of the talk over that we had in the original series. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for today's episode, and we will make sure to come back next week and give our recap of episode 6 as soon as it drops. I hope everyone has a good day, and we will see you at the next one. Peace.